Welcome to my virtual exhibit, Painting Venice in a Pandemic. I spent all of 2020 painting pictures of Venice, and I wish you could be here to see them in person. But because of the COVID-19 lockdown, you can't. Instead, enjoy this video. After spending all of 2019 studying Claude Monet, I decided to do what he did at my age, and that's to paint Venice. I started out with subjects that had obvious similarities to what he had painted, especially my first interpretation of the Doge Palace. Soon I moved away from Monet, but that iconic building became a symbol for one of the project's central themes, global warming. Construction on the Doge Palace began in 1340, almost 700 years ago. It served as the residence for the Republic's supreme authority, and it was the political center for centuries. Initially, I intended to only do a few Venice paintings, and then move on to another subject. But as the pandemic took hold, I kept adding more pictures to the series. Okay, let's get started. After eventually completing 20 paintings of Venice, I spent the last 2 months of 2020 working on this 6-canvas composition. It's of the facade of the Doge's palace, flooded. During the first couple of sessions, I roughed in the main elements using a projector, and then for the next 10 weeks, uncountable brush strokes and layers, I slowly covered most of the orange undercoat. I was first drawn to Venice in 1977. My plan was to move there and write the great American novel. I quit my teaching job and I put my Laurel Canyon house up for sale, and I dreamed of a life of writing and playing guitar for tips. Well, you ain't going nowhere. My plans changed. I met Lindsay Hall at a craft fair where she was selling dolls, and we fell in love at first sight. And then instead of Venice, life happened. We finally made it to Venice for our 25th anniversary, and I looked at our old home movies and found a couple of images that I could paint for this project. And I remember sitting in our hotel room looking out at the Palais Bembo across the Grand Canal when I painted a watercolor. And I hoped that someday I'd have the skills to do that in oil. So this has been a dream come true. "2020 was a tough year, and painting helped me to avoid the constant barrage of details about the global coronavirus pandemic and America's chaotic and deadly political response to it. So working on this big project was especially helpful for my emotional well-being after the presidential election was so seditiously contested. I escaped into each small brush stroke like a heartbeat during meditation. This isn't Monet's fog. In early March, the coronavirus brought an invisible, deadly gloom to Venice, and soon Italy was locked down, as was I in California. I began finding beautiful images of Venice without tourists and the usual boat traffic and pollution. There were rumors of swans and dolphins in the Grand Canal, but they were actually in neighboring islands. Once we entered our quarantine, which was only a few days after Italy started theirs, I felt driven to paint as if my life depended on it. When I saw photos of how Venice was devastated by high tides and flooding the previous year, I finally comprehended how catastrophic global warming would be to them, and coastal cities like my hometown Carlsbad. To prevent flooding, engineers have spent nearly 40 years creating a system of 78 giant barriers to seal off the Venetian lagoon, and it was used for the first time during storms while I was beginning this composition. Although most of Venice stayed drier, the Doge's palace was once again deluged. It has survived massive fires and 6 centuries of decay, but with rising tides and stronger storms due to climate change, my fear is that this painting may still be on a wall after the building itself no longer exists. Ultimately, I'm hopeful about the pandemic subsiding. In fact, Lindsay and I got our second vaccines and are ready to end our strict lockdown. However, COVID-19 is not nearly as risky as global warming. Whether or not coastal cities like Venice will still be standing after we ourselves are gone is up to all of us for the rest of our lives.